How's it going out there, YouTube? My name is Jesse, and I am the curator for the Golden Age, and this is another...
Lost Heroes of the Golden Age.
Yes, this is Lost Heroes of the Golden Age. And this time, we are doing an unusual concept.
Should have done this 2 videos ago.
Two videos ago. That would have been 166. Oh, cute. Yeah, adding up to the number 13. Although you're not wrong, I didn't actually start reviewing this hero until last week.
Another accidental discovery.
No, I didn't just discover this guy. This is a guy that I wanted to go over for a while. I just started reviewing him last week.
The conceptualization of this character is not exactly normal.
The initial concept of this is a bit ridiculous, but not in the way that you would normally find ridiculous in regards to Golden Age heroes. This is an unusual formation of the hero, although it seemed to abandon the core concept pretty quickly and only kept it in name only. This is a creation of a superhero born through tragedy, which is kind of common for the superheroes, but the tragic elements don't seem to follow in the continuation stories afterwards. It seems to only be there for the discussing the creation of him and how he came into being the superhero, but it didn't follow it didn't follow after that. It was series of unlucky circumstances that led him to be the so-called superhero. The superhero is number 13 and his partner Jinx. But after the initial concept of bad luck and being in the formation of giving him his superhero name, he didn't seem to have any misfortune that wasn't associated to a hero that would normally be out there. And normally a hero would get, captured or held in some way where they would break out. But it wasn't the fact that he has been unlucky in the past that led him to being captured. Which would have been interesting is if this number, even though he embraced the bad luck of this number, would still be a concept of this hero, but it wasn't. So he only kept the 13 in name only. I think that if he constantly was having series of bad luck to get him and his partner captured, that would have been more of an interesting story and would have lasted longer than, let's see, he started in 13, ended in 17, so 15 stories. So, I think it could have gone on longer if the initial cause of him being this hero would have been a factor in more of the stories, but he became a typical superhero that you would see at this time in the 40s, fighting off Nazis, preserving the ideals of America. It was just pretty common for a non-powered superhero. But I think that the supernatural element of the number 13 could have been fascinating part of this hero's identity. And if they wanted to bring it back, make sure that they preserve the concept of that number in the stories where he would have a series of bad luck due to the numbers that he would have to overcome. So I cover him briefly. I go over some of the creation of him and where they started from. I think the origin of this guy is excellent. I love the origin. The stories after that seem pretty typical at that point after that. Non-power costume superheroes fighting Nazis in the era of the time where something like that would be effective. So you can probably guess where most of these storylines were aiming to. So let's go ahead and cover 13 and his first appearance on the Lost Heroes of the Golden Age. 13, Harold Higgins, first appears in Daredevil Comics number 3 in 1941. The original publisher is Gleason, and he's created by Bernie Klein and Dick Wood. 13 it's an interesting creation at the start. I mean, after that, he basically turns into what you would see from a non-powered superhero dynamic team. Nothing really with the gadgets or anything. Now, in the first couple issues, he is by himself, and in the third issue, he saves a kid on top of the Statue of Liberty who is to inherit a fortune, but the uncle tries to kill him so that the uncle can inherit the fortune, but basically this kid inherits it instead. Now, in his first introduction, we show why he's embracing the number 13. And what is a really interesting thing is we actually get more of a background into his life in issue number 5. We actually get a text story, the story behind 13 by Dick Wood. And we actually go into his past, where we talk about him from a young age. And on one of these, let's see, as he's younger, here's a little bit of a passage. Time passes swiftly in the younger days of Harold Higgins. The curse had not gained power enough to strike hard and ruthlessly true. The years were marked with numerous moments of bad luck. A broken leg on the 13th of a month, a failure in history when he turned in the 13th essay, and many other minor tragedies studded his childhood. But they were insignificant, troublesome as mosquito bites compared to what was to come. And it was on his it was on one of his birthdays. I think it was his 13th birthday. He was dancing with his girlfriend, and she was killed by a chandelier that fell from the ceiling and crushed her, which made me go, oh my good God, people. You couldn't have maimed her? You had to kill her? But it's interesting that they did this whole text story. Now, what was really unusual about this was the placement of the text story. It's in the very beginning of the comic book, right after Daredevil's story. You get 2 pages, and then they break it, and then the rest of the story won't continue until page 51, which is after 13th story, which is, it was in issue 5, which is also the introduction of Jinx. So it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense of why they would have the text story starting and then break it off and to continue after the story, because I know in the second half of the story behind 13, that's when they mentioned Jinx. So I guess maybe they wanted to break it off before Jinx was mentioned. But if you were just going to have it after the story, why not have the entire text story after the comic? Not break it in half and do that. I mean, I did like the fact that they elaborated more on the past and showed how 13 had haunted his life up until this point, which, when we cover the first issue, you'll see a whole lot of instances of 13 affecting his life. So, they didn't really need it, but it is kind of interesting. But why they broke it up into 2 segments of having the one segment, and the 13th story doesn't even follow right behind it. The Daredevil, the 13th story is the second to the last story, which is 40-something. So they have the story on page 13, and then you go into the 40-something where you get 13 and Jinx introduction to get to page 53 where they have the rest of the story. I don't understand that. I've seen text stories take up several pages, but they never break it up in half like that. It's really kind of weird. Now, they don't really explain how 13 got the fighting skills that he did over the years, but they do have a bit of an introduction with Jinx. he said, "Remember what I learned last summer?" We can see him flipping his uncle over, his shoulder, trying to subdue him. So we learn that Jinx actually has some prowess in fighting. Now, he gets his suit, which very much mimics 13. Now, in the very first issue, 13's shirt is black, and as it goes on, it starts becoming more blue. Like in this issue where they introduce him, you see a lot of the instances of black mixed in with the blue. Now, he goes straight in blue, and instead of a full dome-covered mask, he just wears a domino mask. And he has the red cape, but he got the he also wears the trunks with the yellow and all that. Now, Jinx, like I said, 13 would appear before Jinx in 2 issues, and both of their comics would end with issue number 17. Now, this was a little bit of an interesting thing here that I haven't seen in other comics. On the very last page of number 16, the last panel, it says, "Later at headquarters, come in and take a bow." And 13 says, "After the war, right now we have a date in the next month's issue of Daredevil." It's not exactly fourth wall breaking, but it's very meta. And that is not something I've seen before. Now, in the last issue, at least they didn't say 13 will be appearing in the next Daredevil comics. It just ends. Now, he only has one cover appearance, and that's when they were showing other ones. Daredevil owned the cover. He never had the featured story. Now, where his story did appear was different. Sometimes he would appear right after Daredevil, or he was the backup feature, and then a lot of times he would appear in the middle. So there was no consistency for where his story took place. In the beginning, he did have a 4-part story where he had kind of a arch enemy known as the Question Mark. He was a hunchback, and he had a couple of chapter stories, but then after that they became mostly contained. He was fighting a lot of Nazis and subversives. Now, in the last, I think it was 4 issues, they showed them being concerned with trying to preserve the Navy. As in, they were taking down people who were trying to sabotage the Navy. Taking down allyship with depth charges, trying to sabotage them from the inside. So, in the last couple of issues, Jinx and 13 were there to save boats, basically. And most of the time, they just ended up where they needed to be. But, like I said, the last couple of issues, stopping the boats from being directly affected. But, I mean, 13 and Jinx was propaganda. They were taking on Nazis and subversives. That's basically what it was. A few arch enemies here and there. In one issue, they had this scantily clad woman who was turning people into Nazis, I think, by voodoo. And at one point, Jinx goes, "Boy, she can bewitch me anytime, and I wouldn't make a peep. Jinx, compose yourself." And as I was reading that to myself, the voice was like, "Me too." I'm like, don't. Okay. It was weird. I thought she was Oriental because she was kind of yellow in her first issue, and she was part of a 2-parter story. But in her second appearance, she was completely whitewashed. So I'm not sure what nationality it was. In 2 different issues, she appeared to be 2 different. But that was it. No special powers. I mean, you could probably say maybe he had luck powers by the way he was embracing 13 and it wasn't working against him anymore. But not that I really know. They were, from what I could tell, they were comparable fighters, and they were athletes with the skills that they had to do. Detectives for the most part, but I mean, all non-power superheroes had to be good with combat. athletic, acrobatic detectives. I mean, if they weren't, they wouldn't be solving any crimes. Okay, so let's go ahead and cover the first issue, and you can see how they got started, and it'll also be a run-through of how 13 has affected his life, and then you'll know more about 13. Start with an editorial note. For those of you who are suspicious, the editors advise extreme caution in the reading of this material, for who can say what truth may lie behind the fear that is following this numeral down through the ages. 13, the nemesis number of all time, rears its ugly head and casts a shadow of tragedy over the life of Harold Higgins. But from this evil digit, an idea is born, and from this idea springs a startling figure who is soon to turn the number of ill omen into a boomerang and crucify the crossroads of crime with a campaign of justice, which brings to all the underworld the fear of 13. Benny Klein and Dick Wood. So, the splash page here has 13 on top of 13 with a shadow of 13. And in the offices, you can see it's the 13th. And, the 13th is a big part of this first issue. In the heart of Hollywood, a cinema star disappears, and in the office of the Herald, managing editor Clyde Russo fires an employee. So what if Larry Miller is lost? I told you Ann Ling had nothing to do with it. You're fired on the 13th. So now a lot of 13s. So now we go through a little bit of his life where all the bad stuff happens on the 13th of a particular month. February 13th, a plane crashes in the swamplands of Cuba. On board is Hal's brother Bob. A month later, March 13th, at the New York Stock Exchange, sorry, Mr. Higgins, you're wiped out. South A.H. Cooper is off the market. May 13th, another close tragedy strikes close to home. A sister, Marjorie, crippled for life. On the night of July 13th, the SS Heartland fails to reach port, carrying to a watery grave Captain Higgins Sr. Finally, on September 13th, Hal's fiancée falls victim to a speeding truck, a terrible finale. As Harold Higgins leaves his position in the Hollywood Herald, a past possession of tragedy filters through his mind. Each and every case of these heart-rending events occurred on the 13th day of the month. And now, ironically, on April 13th, his very livelihood is endangered. Can this be a coincidence? And as he's leaving the office, he also remarks that his name has 13 letters in it, which I went back and looked at it. And yes, it does. 13 just haunts this guy all over. But he wants to prove that this... I hate the way that people of Oriental are painted yellow, but that was just a sign of the times. I mean, even in some of the comic books, there was a board game that you could play in the comic books called Slap the Jap. I mean, there's a lot of offensive material in the 40s. Okay. So he wants to go prove that Ann Ling, in fact, has this actor, and he's peeping into the house. An hour later, listening outside the Pontific Beach home? That's what it looks like. The way they spaced it out makes it a little difficult. Home of Ann Ling, nightclub owner, is a well-known Hollywood playgirl. Great Caesars Russo's the editor. Now I get it. So the editor is in cahoots with Ann Ling. That's why he didn't want Higgins to report on it. So as he sees them engaging into an argument, he wants to break in. So he reveals that he is 13. Now, 13 does have a black shirt, as you see here, and as we went over in the opener, I mentioned how he has the blue shirt. Okay. Yeah, the cape, the mask, the trunks. I hate the fact when male superheroes wear trunks. It doesn't look right. And the red boots. I honestly think that the black shirt works a lot better than the blue. It's a nice contrast. It's time I started dishing out bad fortune, and these sly four-flushing vermin are a good duet to start with. So, basically, the 13 was marked with tragedy. So what he does is, instead of letting the number define his life, which up to this point it has, he's embracing the number. And because he's embracing it, it doesn't actually work against him anymore. Or, that's the point I'm drawing from this. Because, I mean, except for a couple of the issues where he does get knocked out and captured, he really is not falling victim to any more tragedies. Okay, so let's see. This is our last chance, Miller. The partly 10,000 will save you disgrace and your life. Your life. You're filthy with money. So she has him captured and wants, pay your own ransom to free yourself. I mean, okay. 13 suddenly breaks in and starts trashing the men. Like a mad scene from Hollywood's own picture studios, 13 sallies into the shrieking mob of crazed henchmen. Stop him, you fools! Let's see. I could almost go for that one-man blitzkrieg myself, but right now, Adling had better take a trip fast. So she is actually admiring 13 the way he's going through them. That's not that unusual. This is the only time we're going to see her, though. So I think it's kind of interesting that she's like, I could go for this guy if it wasn't for the fact that he's trying to, turn me in. So she escapes, jumps into her speeding car, and gets away. There she goes, tricked half of Hollywood and made a fool of me. But we'll meet again. No, you won't. Not in the issues that you're in. So let's read the very last bit here. Got the 3 panels and a little bit of wall breaking, a fourth wall breaking. The next day, framed up, racketer revealed. Herald editor confesses. It's amazing. Look at Mike. All we found is a calendar and this editorial guy trustled up with 6 Chinese. 13, aye, that's a funny one. Hope you enjoyed my first adventurer, fellows. Be with me next month when I really open up against the menaces of our society. So, this isn't the only fourth wall break. You saw it earlier. Okay, so that's 13. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something a little bit about this hero. I enjoyed reviewing him for the most part. I love the origin. Now, if there's any other characters that you would like to see that come from Liv Gleason or Ajax Farwell, MLJ, any Golden Age material out there, something that you would like to see me cover, I'm more than happy to fill out requests. So, if you have any, you can leave those in the comment section, and I can definitely start making a list again. Well, like I said, I hope you enjoyed this one. Until the next time, I'll be seeing you.